welcome to another Times Radio Frontline recap, looking at some of the key videos that have been put out over the last week. And oh boy, what a week it has been. Whenever I did the last one last Thursday, didn't realize what was going to happen on Friday and since then. I'm Philip Ingram, a former senior British military intelligence officer and now commentator on all matters geopolitics, defence, security, counterterrorism, cyber and other things. And the four videos we've got for you this week, the first one has to be the obvious. It is the meeting in the Oval Office between President Zelensky and Donald Trump last Friday.
President Trump, what's your message to Vladimir Putin, sir? President Trump, do you have a message for Vladimir Putin as you meet with President Zelensky today?
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
I'm not playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
You're
playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
You think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You haven't been alone.
In this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you. You're running
Mr.
low
President.
On soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out.
Mr. President, is there no deal? Mr. President,
earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. regarding the agreement on minerals and security. Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace.
Now, the things that come out from this video, and from my perspective, I think Zelensky was set up. You know, Donald Trump has changed the way his top team works, or the top team of supporting the president works. You know, it's usually the president, and when he's dealing with global leaders on foreign affairs, it's his Secretary of State that takes the lead. The vice president is, in many presidencies beforehand, seems to be focused more on domestic political issues. Now, it's up to Donald Trump how he uses his team. But J.D. Vance coming in here, building on what seemed to be a set-up question about whether President Zelensky was wearing a suit or not, and whether he thought that was appropriate, and then Vance coming in and effectively attacking Zelensky without letting Zelensky come back and defend his position. And then Donald Trump coming in and backing his vice president. Now, I'd always expect a president to back the vice president, but actually, if Donald Trump was going to be the elder statesman here and set things out, he should have said to both J.D. Vance, his vice president, and to President Zelensky, you gentlemen, this is a discussion for us to have out of the public gaze, so let's adjourn and do that now. He shouldn't have let it play out in public. That was done for an effect, and it was done for an effect to embarrass Zelensky and to set the conditions to force Zelensky to produce this deal, which Zelensky had clearly refused to sign because there wasn't any form of guarantees, security guarantees within the rare earth metals deal that Trump was trying to get him to sign, but also I think it was trying to take more rare earth metals and a greater percentage than Ukraine was willing to give up. So things have changed dramatically since that came out, and I think it has changed the whole order of what is going on with regard to US support to Ukraine. And since then, we've seen the US withdraw intelligence support, withdraw all aid from Ukraine to stop the supply of weapons. And this is not just causing consternation inside Ukraine, but it's also causing additional consternation inside Europe, because Europe is being forced to step up dramatically. And there's a lot of political meetings going on there. And how that differs from our next video, which is whenever Keir Starmer went and visited Donald Trump and they sat down together.
Mr. Trump, what have you in common with Keir Starmer?
Thank you for changing the conversation to bring about the possibility that now we can have a peace deal, and we want to work with you to make sure that peace deal is enduring, that it lasts, that it's a deal that goes down as a historic deal, that nobody breaches, and we'll work with you to make sure that that absolutely happens.
Well, so President Zelensky is coming to see me on Friday morning, and we're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides, because it's really going to get us into that country. We'll be working there. We'll have a lot of people working there. And so in that sense, it's very good. It's a backstop, you could say. I don't think anybody's going to play around if we're there with a lot of workers and having to do with rare earths and other things, which we need for our country. And we appreciate it very much. And I look forward to seeing him. We'll be talking about it, and we'll also be talking about that today with the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we've already indicated that we'll play our full part in making sure that any deal, if there is one, and I hope there is, and I think this is a historic moment, to make sure it's a lasting deal, and we're about to have a discussion about how we can make that work.
But I have to say this, as I said yesterday, you're talking about a peacekeeping force. We have to make a deal first. Right now, we don't have a deal. We have Russia, we have Ukraine. I think we're very well advanced. I think Russia has been acting very well. We have Representatives Steve Witkoff and Scott and Marco and JD. We're all involved, every one of us, and a lot more. But I think we're very well advanced on a deal, but we have not made a deal yet. So I don't like to talk about peacekeeping until we have a deal. I like to get things done
Do you think that Vladimir Putin would be likely to invade again in the event of a peace deal?
I don't think so. I think when we have a deal, it's going to be the deal. I don't think if I didn't win the election, I don't think we'd be even talking to Putin right now or anybody else. I think it would just, I don't know if you're looking at the stats, but thousands of people are being killed a week, soldiers mostly, because the towns have been destroyed. But thousands of soldiers. This was a very bad week, by the way. I get the stats.
Terrible numbers.
And you're talking about a human life. Number one, I want to see that, and it doesn't involve American soldiers, but it's Russian and Ukrainian soldiers. And I think I'm speaking for both.
Yeah.
Number one, we want to see that stop, and number two, I want to stop paying the kind of money that we're talking about. We're helping, and we're helping NATO, but we're helping a lot. I don't believe he's going to violate his word. I don't think he'll be back. When we make a deal, I think the deal's going to hold. Now, they're going to have security. You're going to have security. Yep. You're going to have soldiers. I know France wants to be there.
The deal, if we get it, is going to be hugely important. I don't think it would have happened if the space hadn't been created for it by yourself. But if there's a deal in, we've got to make sure it's a deal that lasts, that is not temporary, that lasts, and that's why we need to make sure that it's secure, and we've lent in and said we'll play our part, and we've talked and we will talk about how we work with yourself, Mr. President, to ensure that this deal is something which is not violated, because it's very important that if there is a deal, we keep it.
And that will be, and I think I could say that will be the easy part. That's the part we look forward to, because putting security there, that's the part we all look forward to. That's easy. The difficult part is getting the deal made. So, it's trust and verify, let's call it that. And I think we both can be that way. You have to verify, because you never know what's going to happen. I know. Well, he's coming. Perhaps he's already on his way. And we're going to be signing the deal together, probably in front of the media. And we're going to be having a good conversation. No, we want to work with him, President Zelensky, she said before. We want to work with him, and we will work with him. I think the president and I actually have had a very good relationship. It maybe got a little bit testy because we wanted to have a little bit of what the European nations had. They get their money back by giving money. We don't get the money back. Biden made a deal. He put in $350 billion. And I thought it was a very unfair situation.
We're not getting all of ours. I mean, quite a bit of ours was gifted. It was given. There were some loans, but mainly it was gifted, actually.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
So, Europeans want Ukraine to be part of NATO as part of this deal. Are you willing to budge on that at all, or is it a firm?
Well, I could be very nice and say, oh, well, we'll work to it. Look, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's what started this whole thing. The relationship between President Zelensky and President Putin is not a good one. You've noticed, right? It's not a good one. It's not a good relationship. And we're going to have to try and work something out. Sometimes that happens. I get along with both. I have a very good relationship with President Putin. I think I have a very good relationship with President Zelensky. And now we're doing the deal, and we're going to be in there. We're going to be actually in there, and digging our hearts out. And hopefully, we need the rare earth, and we have some here, but we don't have enough. Our economy is very strong, and we need a lot of things that, in some cases, we don't have here.
It's interesting watching the body language. Starmer's visit to Trump came just after Francois Macron, the French president's visit, where Macron corrected Trump in public. You can see Starmer following the same body language and reaching out and touching Trump and correcting Trump again when it came to, in particular, donations to Ukraine. Trump said that European nations were getting payback and they were getting their money back from Ukraine. Starmer very quickly came in and corrected and said, no, we have given our aid and are not expecting any of it back. Starmer thought he had set the conditions for the Zelensky visit, which was the day afterwards. Clearly how things can change within 24 hours. Both these are well worth watching because they've set up the geopolitical position that we're in at the moment. So of the Frontline videos that we've got this week, the first one is from Matthew Saville from Russi, and he's talking about the rare earth minerals deal and how that could work out.
Both sides are losing, but Russia is losing less slowly. And the issue is not that this is an inevitable defeat for Ukraine, if its backers continued to back it and did more. It's that at the moment, the personnel problems, that attritional warfare is exacting a higher toll on Ukraine and making the situation less favourable for it every day.
Do you think that explains why, despite the disgraceful treatment of Zelensky by Trump and Vance in the Oval Office on Friday, Zelensky said last night he is still open to this US minerals deal because he probably recognises that it's the best form of security guarantee he will get from the US. And Trump's argument would be, if you have American contractors on the ground, it may not be a formal security guarantee, but it offers some kind of protection for them.
Yeah, we need to pick that apart a little bit. I mean, I think the way that the minerals deal was being expressed in terms of the details that emerged just over a week ago, it was very unfavourable to Ukraine. It was, give us lots of money now, if you're the US, for things that we've already done, and we won't provide you with any security guarantees, but hey, we'll see what we can do. It sounds like the Ukrainians negotiated it down to the promise of future exploitation of minerals without the big upfront payment and still no security guarantees, which is a problem because it doesn't really provide you with much comfort, but at least you're still being extorted, but at least you're not paying a vast sum for the privilege of having a discussion. I think he is returning to it, possibly because behind the scenes the UK is encouraging him to do so. And this is one area where the past week, if you were to look at the more significant change, it would be the fact that the US position was on full display, and the nature of the bust-up last week makes it difficult for the Ukrainians to continue without trying to mend bridges, and that will be a bitter pill to swallow. I'm not sure they're going to be very comfortable about it, obviously, but they do need to do something. I think he is essentially trying to reset that in a way that is emollient, but ideally doesn't involve him doing too much public apologising. He has a domestic constituency to appeal to. He has an audience in Europe and in Russia that he needs to project some kind of strength to. And in that respect, the events over the weekend with European countries and Canada rallying round to a degree is an important boost to him.
And is that argument that the presence of US contractors on the ground exploiting Ukraine's mineral resources would deter Putin, is that a valid argument in your view? Would it be a deterrent?
I understand why it's why it's an argument that is being made. I'm not sure if I'm convinced. I believe I've seen some claims from the media, people going back to 2022, that there were tens of thousands of US civilians, contractors, businessmen in Ukraine at the time of the invasion. And that played no role in seriously influencing the Russian decision to invade. Putting people working on exploitation in the country might complicate Russian decision making. But I can't help but feel if the situation ramped up as tensions went up, it would be inevitable that the travel advice or the advice of their companies or their insurance would be, you need to leave the country. And if needs be, the US would conduct what is known as a non-combatant evacuation operation, a NEO, and it would get them out or encourage them to make their own way out. They're not going to stand around and willingly be the tethered goat as a Russian combined arms army rolls towards them. I think that's pretty fanciful that would happen deliberately. And in any case, if there's a resumption of violence, I think the suspicion at the moment would be that the Trump administration, at least, would blame it on the Ukrainians.
And so Vladimir Putin thinks that there is no scenario probably in which if he were to move again on Ukraine, and yes, there are American contractors on the ground, he thinks, well, Donald Trump's not going to deploy US troops to protect them.
I think there would need to be an awful lot of signalling to to convince Putin otherwise, because if you were guessing now, you wouldn't believe that. And in fact, I think Putin has shown he is prepared to take risks and gamble. The big picture is that his gamble on Ukraine is not necessarily paying off at the moment, but he took that risk. There is now sunk costs involved. They still haven't achieved their main goal. It is difficult to see that the presence of a few thousand contractors in country would really change things. And this is where we get into this Trump unpredictability argument. He's unpredictable, that deters his adversaries. I think the problem is if your messaging is inconsistent and your adversary is a risk taker, they tend to lean the other way, or they might lean the other way, and gamble that they can get away with it, that Trump's mercurial nature will play out differently. Now, if this were not Ukraine, maybe that calculation would be different, but he has so clearly signaled that he is not interested in a conflict with Russia over Ukraine. So what is it that the US would do to change that perception in advance of any future Russian invasion?
Whoever thought that rare earth metals and rare earth minerals could be sexy or could be so important when it came to a geopolitical position? And therefore this is well worth watching. But rare earth metals, rare earth minerals are critical. You know, we all have these sorts of devices. Every electronic device that is used around the world relies on rare earth minerals, whether they be the more common ones like lithium that go into the batteries, or some of the less common ones that go into the touchscreen technology, or other processor technologies and things that are in all of our electronic devices. The issue there is with rare earth metals, and I think this is something that is driving Donald Trump, is that China owns 90% of the mines that produce economically viable mines that produce rare earth metals around the world. Either produce them and process them inside China. That's giving China a monopoly over everything that is electronic, electric, and where the world is going. Lithium is a perfect example. A lot of the lithium is mined outside China, large proportions of it inside Australia, but China owns the mines where it comes from. It is then taken to China and is processed into the lithium that is used in the batteries. And China is one of the global leaders in renewable energies and the batteries that are associated with it and everything else. China has 2 processing plants. The United States doesn't have the same sort of supply of lithium ore to go and be processed. And the United States has only got 1 processing plant. Interestingly, and here's where if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would have a different theory, but that processing plant is owned by Tesla. Elon Musk Trump's head of Doge. Rare earth metals are critical to the Americans and have been for quite some time. Trump has recognized the Chinese dominance of the rare earth metals market. The US has generally for quite a while, and the US Department of Defense has been opening non-economically viable mines to source rare earth metals to build up stocks that they can then continue to use across the high-tech defense industry should China restrict access to those. I think what Donald Trump is trying to do is open that up even more to take away China's dominance. And if we see a lot of his other rhetoric and discussion, it's all about China's dominance in trade, and he's trying to break that dominance. So I think that is a major driving factor in what we're seeing here. And Matthew Saville explains a lot of the detail behind rare earth metals exceptionally well. Our other video this week is about Bill Browder, and Bill Browder is talking about Europe's relationship with Russia and how that should go. And this is one that I would recommend you definitely do need to watch.
You mentioned sanctions a moment ago. I wonder if you feel this has got to be the time now where we look seriously at seizing those frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's defense.
Well, here we are in a situation where America supplies about 40% of the necessary money for Ukraine to fight this war. We, together with Europe and a few other allies, supply 60%. The person supplying the 40% has now announced they're no longer supplying it. Ukraine needs 100% in order to keep on defending themselves. And so the question is Is the British taxpayer going to pay for that? Or is Vladimir Putin going to pay for that? Because we have Vladimir Putin's money here. And I don't know how Rachel Reeves can stand up in front of Parliament and say anything other than that money should be confiscated and that money will be spent on defending Ukraine to fill in for the American shortfall, because anything else would be political suicide.
How quickly could it be done? How quickly could you seize those assets and start using them to fund Ukraine's defense?
Today. It could be done today. We've already made it the legal decision that we can seize the interest on those assets. And there's no difference between the interest and the principal from a legal standpoint. That money could be seized today, and it should be seized today. And then we should put in orders for whatever equipment Ukraine needs, ideally from European manufacturers, but from wherever, so that Ukraine can continue to fight this war and defend themselves, and that the front lines don't collapse.
And how fundamentally, if we did make that decision today, how fundamentally do you think it would shift the momentum of this war?
Well, I don't think it'll, I mean, I think the momentum is shifting very radically against Ukraine, because even with the money, what happens when Elon Musk turns off Starlink? That we need to come up with an alternative for that. What about the long-range missiles that the U.S. provided that they won't provide? Is there an alternative to that? What about the Patriot missile batteries that are used for air defense that come from America? Where's the alternative going to come from that? And so even with the money, there's still a lot of practical things that the U.S. has done that they're going to stop doing, that we need to figure out an alternative. Now, I don't think it's a doomed situation. Ukrainians have proven, when Russia invaded, that even though things looked bad, they could push back hard, and they care about it, and they will push back hard. But this definitely is a major, major body blow to Ukraine, and many more people will die because of this decision.
So seizing those frozen Russian assets immediately, what else would you like to see, Bill? What else could Ukraine's European allies in particular be doing right now to help?
Well, I think the main thing that needs to be done in addition to that is for us to form a modified defense pact, which is that without America in NATO, we need to now look at I'm sure they're doing it, but we need to come up with a plan, which is, what if Putin moves on Estonia? What are we going to do? How do we stop him? How do we scare him from doing that? And again, we're not doomed. We have a lot of resources compared to Putin, and Putin is also exhausted. But if we don't get up on that real quick, Putin will do a lot of stuff that makes everything he's done so far look like child's play. I mean, we are in for really a very difficult time going forward if we don't become a proper military deterrent to Vladimir Putin.
Do you think the past week or so has been the moment that those European leaders have woken up fully to the threat posed by Putin? Because a lot of people have said we've had wake-up calls for years, and yet we've hit the snooze button every time. We've deferred the problem. Do you think, given the rhetoric coming out of the White House in the past week or so, this is now the moment that Europe gets it?
Yeah, I do think so. And you can see that in the language of the new German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who's basically come out and said that. And he said it, and he said, and we're going to have to create an 800 billion euro fund to fund our defense. And by the way, there's one fringe benefit which nobody's been talking about, which is that the German economy has been in a real state of desperation because of Russian gas cheap Russian gas no longer being available, and the Chinese market no longer being so robust. But this massive investment in defense will create all sorts of economic activity in Germany that they hadn't counted on. And it might very well in other parts. The Russian economy has done well off of their defense spending. Well, we're going to start spending on defense, probably from borrowed money and borrowing from the future, which is unfortunate, but that might give us an economic fillip as well.
Just finally, Bill, if you are Vladimir Putin, what is the one thing you don't want to see the Europeans doing? What is it that the Europeans could do that would strike fear in the Kremlin? Is it just getting serious on defense, ramping up our defense budgets? Is it providing, for example, Germany giving Taurus missiles to Ukraine? Is it the seizing of those assets, or is it something else? What would most worry Putin at this point?
I think if we seize the 300 billion, that's a major body blow to him. At that point, Ukraine can live to fight another day, and whatever Donald Trump is doing to try to bully Europe and Ukraine, that money goes a long way.
So, Bill, from me, the bits that come out of it that are really important is him turning around and saying what Europe should do to continue to send a message to Vladimir Putin and to turn around to Donald Trump and say, hey, we can help look after Ukraine, is to seize the $200 to $300 billion of Russian assets that are sitting in Europe, 200 billion are sitting in Belgium, and use that to fund support to Ukraine. And within that, it could be used to buy weapons from the United States. I think Donald Trump would be very happy to do that and see the money coming back in again. There's a lot of discussion going on about the complexity of that within the international community, because people believe that if that is seized, that will set a precedence where assets of other countries could be seized in a similar way by hostile states if they so wanted to. But when that was put to Bill turned around and said, but the precedence has already been set. We're already seizing the interest from the assets and using that interest to support Ukraine. So it does not take very much, and he says we could actually do it today. It doesn't take very much to go and seize those whole assets, and that would send a very strong message. And Bill's understanding of how Europe should begin to play Putin and play Russia, and Europe's important position in that is critical. I do hope that our European leaders will tune in and listen to that and listen to what Bill said, because his understanding, his advice is very clear indeed. Definitely one that I think they should all watch. So that's today's roundup. I don't know what's going to happen by this time next week, but please sign up for Times Radio Frontline membership, and we will keep you up to speed on what is happening, give you access to exclusive content, and if you want to put your comments and put your questions in, that will then help us with our question and answer session. I'm Philip Ingram. Thank you for watching.